Okay, cool. Sonia, off you go.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. You're all very welcome to Nash Talks again this week, our regular series of talks where we're aiming to support the new working world we found ourselves in. And we've covered many things now, from nutrition to adapting your home to become an office, and physio. We've had teachers tell us how to be more creative with our kids, and mindfulness coaches to tell us how to calm down and de-stress. Today we're thrilled to be able to talk about a real challenge that many of our clients have faced: remote onboarding. We have two directors from our business. Will Parker is a director in the UK in our Leeds business, and we have Susan from the Dublin office. They've been at the coalface talking to clients and helping them understand how to adapt. Some have been quite well set up already in terms of what we've seen, and some have had some real challenges and needed more guidance. In a slight change from our usual format today, we're going to get straight into the client case studies, because some of you said that's what you're really keen to hear. And both Susan and Will are going to talk you through some scenarios clients have faced. Then Will has very kindly offered to just give us some takeaways and share a presentation where a lot of the things that we talk about you'll have from documented. And then we'll do our usual Q&A at the end. So any questions that you have throughout Susan, Will, or the presentation, keep putting them into the Q&A box, and we'll field them all at the end. So on that note, I'll hand you over to Susan first. Thank you very much, Susan, for agreeing to do this. I think people are very interested in, you know, as I said, the challenges and how people overcame them. Certainly from our point of view, we had an awful lot of things paused at the beginning because clients weren't ready, and more they are learning how to adapt. So thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you. So I think most of the questions that we've gotten around this is what were the initial challenges which were which were posed by a lot of our clients. And some of them, I mean, without naming names, I'll talk across an array of different companies and different size companies. And what they have seen is that we have a particular client who has had a global setup and has been in a global setup for the last 3 years, and therefore had an infrastructure that allowed them to onboard remotely with people who were in, you know, other countries, etc. But also they had allowed some remote work within their structure for their employees. So for the likes of them, something like this was, they were already equipped very quickly to, you know, start that, you know, continue on with their recruitment, and also remote onboard everybody quite quickly and quite easily. And some of the aspects that they've kind of looked at, and I suppose improvements on what they've done remote onboarding, is really giving the setup of their first day as an employee exactly the same way as it would have been if they were in the office. So the introduction in the morning, they've sent out all of the laptop, the phone, etc. a couple of days previous, and on the actual day, start date, really engaging with that person straight off the bat, 9 o'clock in the morning. Their HR induction begins, and introductions to team and hiring managers. These all seem like really basic parts of, you know, firstly, you know, a normal remote onboarding, but there's steps that have been taken with great, I suppose, thought put behind it, in trying to keep the person engaged and get to know their team. So that, I suppose, was one of the offices that really grasped the remote onboarding quite quickly, and also have brought it to the next level in trying to keep the new candidate and the new employee engaged. So other areas that we felt that were really challenging were companies who didn't have that really good infrastructure already in place, and had the initial problem of even getting laptops out to people. So starting people who are over in London and not being able to get them to Ireland in order to get the laptop. So what they have done in some cases, and challenge being trying to get physical hardware to people, was to adapt their security systems to allow for their own personal laptops to be used, and as an initial and kind of interim solution. And then using these, I suppose, pieces of technology that allow you to get logins through your mobile phone, which allow these tokens to log in. So this was something that I think a lot of companies have adapted to and have taken on board, purely because of the lack of infrastructure around laptop sending to other countries and sending out to people and around Ireland. So you know, initially quite a lot of different challenges around that, but I think now as we've come along the road of this is not going to be a short-term, I suppose, situation or environment that we're working in, they've had to progress on with their ideals of how this remote onboarding happens. I know Will's going to speak a bit more later about kind of, you know, the cultural piece of it and how important that is, and really how to get that fine line between somebody who's had no introduction to their teammates to really trying to engage them through video. And I've reached out in the last few days to some people who I know have been onboarded as first time employees with companies, and the one thing they did say that was really important to them was the initial, the first week, the first month, the check-ins, every day checking in with the team and the hiring manager that they have, and really getting that face time with them to involve them more in the group. And so I'm not sure what have you seen across your clients that may be similar.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Sonia, Susan. I think broadly similar. I think probably the first thing that people became aware of was it's actually getting to understand the person that you're onboarding, and everything that's going on in their world. You know, do they have children? You know, the typical, okay, arrive at 9, plug in your laptop, here's your kit on your desk, I'm your new manager. That's not really practical anymore, because people have children to take care of. You know, just looking at our office, you know, we've got five mums, and so that 8:30, 9 o'clock start time, is that actually practical? You know, is it actually breakfast time? Is it homework time? So does the start time need to adjust? In terms of I think you're absolutely right. I would sort of describe it as inboarding, making them feel part of the team, and obviously there are some challenges that we'll come into later on around how companies have dealt with that, and I guess reacted to making people, responded to making people feel part of a team. But is a call at 12 sensible when that's probably lunchtime for children? Do they have family members that are children they need to go and drop, you know, supplies or food off for? We're in the UK starting to freeze up a little bit, so over the past week we've seen that become a little bit more flexible, but certainly that first week, or it's probably more important before they join, to understand the person, their personal situation, other priorities that they have to cope with, and then exactly as you said, Sis, you know, be flexible around those. I think probably the second thing relating to the company is understanding the complexity of onboarding someone. I think there's so many different parts of a company that are involved in bringing someone on into a new role. So you obviously got the IT piece, and that's where you sort of get into the kit. Where is it located? I forgive me, I don't know what it was like in Ireland, but ours seemed very sudden from a government announcement on a Thursday night. We were then from Friday working remotely, and so kit was in the office. The new starter laptops would be in London or would be in another office. So how are we going to physically get them? Mobile phones, do we have to order them? Okay, where are they coming from? Are those people working? Is there going to be a delay? Licenses, do we have a license? Does it work? Is it linked to a particular VPN if you log on at home? So we work with, I'm sure same everywhere, particularly financial services clients or gaming clients, very, very strict compliance and regulations in terms of logging on from home. Have you spoken to that person around, you know, what's their internet speed? Who's their provider? Are they using a bring your own device? Does it have the right permission set up? How, so that on that day one, when your new joiner comes, there's at least a level of comfort that they open the laptop, they press on, they don't suddenly get hit with a security block screen, because then you start to get into you've already had a bit of discomfort in potentially hour one, minute one. I think on the contracts piece as well, specifically from a HR perspective, it was understanding the process of, again, do we have a DocuSign or an e-signature? Do we have digital versions of the health and safety policy? Do we have digital versions of any IT policies? Do we have fair download policies? And and taking that to a digital medium and being able to share that. And I think exactly as you said, that there were definitely clients who paused and took stock of recruitment early on, but those who were intending to carry on, they were forced to stop or forced to pause because they hadn't got all of the kit was in an office, the contracts weren't digitalized, the e-learning or the onboarding tools that they used weren't fit for purpose. They didn't have enough licenses. Their SharePoint system wouldn't allow for a remote access. The Slack platform wouldn't work on a device that they were using at home, and so we'd have to reissue kit. I think probably the final one in terms of the person, and this is something that we've seen some clients do really well and some clients struggle with, is talking about the home working environment. So for contractors or for perms who have worked at home or worked remotely before, they've probably got an office set up, or they've got some environment that works at home. But I think in a lot of cases they haven't. They're in roles that traditionally, and I don't know if we'll ever sort of go back to that, are Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 in an office where your desk's provided, your chair's provided, your mouse is provided, your screen's provided, your laptop's provided, your headphones provided, headsets. That may not be the case, and so it may be all well and good issuing a laptop that's being tested and checked, but have you checked on the mental well-being? Does this person have and space to work? If so, great. Is it fit for purpose for you? But equally, is it fit for purpose for them? And can you help, not necessarily financially, but can you provide some guidance on what's working for others in your company doing a similar kind of job? Also, what we've seen work well from that is connecting those people up pre-start, because they then feel just naturally more part of the team rather than day one, week one. Hey, you're now working with Lucy. You've never spoken to her before. She's got a really good setup. It would seem to me to make more sense to maybe do that before.
Yeah, and I think we've spoken about that before, that point of contact is really important, knowing who to reach out to for help desk, who to reach out to for information from HR, who to reach out to when it's team information or just general stuff that they need to know. And also the who to reach out to from the social aspect, is there a social club there that I can get involved in? These are all really important things in week one to have very clearly laid out for someone to feel that level of belonging within this new space that they're working in. Because as you said, it's a completely different environment for people, but to start in a company, in that position can be quite tricky. And I as I was saying, I had a couple of conversations with people who've had this situation over the last few weeks, and one person, both very different views on how it's worked out for them, with companies who've been very supportive with hardware and with having everything set up, physically, and and they provided even desks and stuff for them. Yeah. But from one point of view, one started as a people manager, and she's finding it really hard to engage with the staff that she has now had to I suppose manage, and she doesn't know them. She doesn't know their, the ins and outs of what, would be involved in a week to week with them. And then there's the other side of, moving into a role where, he's felt really supported and has, they do competitions in the morning about, what breakfast they're having, and in the evenings they always catch up for kind of a debrief on the day. So he feels really connected to the team that he's in. And there is that not having the connection, through everything that's been set up, but not really feeling belonged to the team and to the management.
I think that vulnerability is okay, because I think everyone's had a feeling of vulnerability, but at the moment, in the transition, if you're moving roles or if you're out of work and moving into a new role, it's never been greater, because with all of the nervousness around hiring, with all of the whatever your personal situation is, there's going to be some level of vulnerability if you're not, I guess, addressing that. And can't, the clients that have done it really well, we work with online seafood retailer, and their HR, we did during this time, their head of e-commerce and a program director role, and their HR director just took it upon herself to speak to each candidate every day, because they sort of recognise we are a very traditional business. We are 9 to 5 in the office. We have pretty inflexible approach to work. It's a needs must, and that's really a needs must. There was no digitalisation of contracts. The kit wasn't necessarily fit for purpose. So, and they've never been busier as a company in terms of, food retail. It's probably one of the busiest markets. So they needed to make these hires, and they needed them to start as quickly as possible. But equally recognising that there was going to be a delay because they weren't set up to onboard in this situation. But by speaking to both candidates, one in a role, transitioning, moving jobs, and one who was out of work, both had a huge level of nervousness around, I haven't received a contract for two or 3 days. Is the job still there? It is. But in a normal world, you wouldn't have that nervousness. I haven't received any kit. Is the job still there? Yeah. It's just a natural process. We don't know how to get it from our office to you. We need to work that out. Am I starting at 8:39? Is it definitely Monday? And actually, by speaking to the candidates every day, there was just a real relief. And I think that sense of comfort, it said a lot about the company that they were joining, which was nice.
And I think, this is something that we need to really face up to the fact that this is the new normal for now onboarding, and will be for, I suppose, the very near and possibly medium term, long term future for us. So, I mean, I know you're going to speak a little bit further in your presentation about some tips to take away that are very kind of HR focused as well. And then hopefully in a couple of weeks, we'll do a part 2 on this, based on some steps that companies really need to consider, looking at from an infrastructure and maybe technology and tooling point of view of what we need to do to move forward, because we can't all stay in this kind of paused sense of reality if we're not moving forward with new hires and etc., because staff retention will become a problem anyway at some point when things start lifting up. But have you had any clients that had particular tooling or anything that did take on board, or any new normals for them?
I guess there's probably 2. I think so. We work with a online gaming company, and they so I think to go back to your first point around the companies that have dealt with it well, have tended to be online or product-centric organisations with a pretty mature policy in terms of flexible working. So they are comfortable in I guess the nature of Agile, you deliver in a fairly obscure environment. You sort of know the direction of travel, but it changes on a fairly frequent basis. So they were more comfortable in this nervousness, and they use a tool called Office Vibe. So they just temperature check on a weekly basis the mental health, the mental well-being of staff. It's an anonymous tool, but they've had some really good feedback from it, and have run a number of initiatives off the back of it. And I think the second point, it's again from smaller companies that I've been speaking to. So one a company called UXplore, they provide software into schools, probably 20 people, all online. And so speaking to their MD yesterday, and the feel is, why would we go back to the office? We have no purpose for the amount of space that we're renting. So and obviously cost per head in that kind of business, it's significant. So there will be a lot of companies out there who will significantly reduce their office space. And so the uptaking of all of the tools that we use, Office 365, WhatsApp, Zoom, Slack, but using them appropriately. If you need to send an email, it has a connotation when you receive it. If you send a WhatsApp, it has slightly different, even when you open it, it has a different feeling. You send something to the group thread, it has a different feel when you receive it. So I think the different channels that people are using are becoming more, I think people are using them in a more sophisticated way, but to have different levels of engagement with people. I think as companies don't go back to the offices, I think we'll see in the UK, or certainly in some instances, they will become the new norm. They will just become further and further developed. I mean, Teams, that you can have four people on the screen until 2 weeks ago, and that goes up to 16. So I think tech is also having to catch up with what's going on as well.
Absolutely. Just looking at the time there, maybe we want to step into a few of your tips on the presentation.
Yeah, let's see if I can share this screen.
Great. I mean, we'll leave some time for questions after.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So I think as you know, we've sort of said, a lot of it comes down to before that new person joins you, making sure that there is a plan that everyone feels comfortable with. But I think the biggest tip for week one is really to make sure that there's a sense of achievement and a sense of belonging when that new person joins. So I'd say the online gaming company, they send personalized videos, they send Just Eat vouchers they send them continuously, but particularly in the first week, so that everyone has a time to have lunch together and have some time with other members of the team. They do coffee roulette, so the new joiners will speak to managers from other teams. They're very their agile practices is pretty well embedded, so that the squads tend to stick together very heavily. Whilst they collaborate well, if you are remote, it would be difficult to meet managers and leaders from other parts of the business. So having those in the diary and getting all of that out early doors. I think, as we've said, the kit, have a test run, make sure that it works where possible. I think most companies have now got a way of getting kit to people, but again, understanding who's joining you, their situation at home, and that the kit will work in their environment is really important. And also all the kit, and that sort of comes back to the it's not just a laptop and a phone that people may need now. Mice, multiple screens, printers, whatever the complete package is really important. I think the admin side it goes back to what we're talking about at the beginning, which is understanding the entire business process for onboarding someone and digitalizing it, because I can't see an employer brand being enhanced by going back to a paper-based system. I think it will now be expected that you are using some form of digital onboarding, and if you're not, I think it would reflect on clarity is so important. So in terms of the expectations for weeks 1, week 4, month 3, obviously that's easier and more challenging with some positions, but certainly in terms of the tasks that they should be doing, again, get this out to people as early as possible, but equally making sure that people are connected. And I know we were speaking yesterday around, so you log on 15 minutes into your new role, your phone doesn't work. How comfortable are you realistically going to be to pick up the phone to someone on the help desk who you've never spoken to before? How you're not able to connect to the central system? How comfortable are you going to be to pick up the phone to the head of accounts on 15 minutes into the job? I'd sort of argue possibly not. So making sure that you've got the introductions in place, and also that you are taking a proactive approach to inclusion. That I think what most people are doing really well are the team calls. I don't know about anyone else, but there's definitely a bit of quiz fatigue. But I think definitely having team calls and having them in different settings as well. Again, Zoom, slightly more relaxed. It's probably what you're using with friends. Teams, it's definitely slightly more business. Slack is obviously sort of a bit of a hybrid. But making sure that there's a good level of visibility and communication coming back. There's no doubt that it's going to take longer for hires to get up to speed, but I think the most important thing in week 1 is making sure that they know that they're welcome and being proactive in terms of getting yourself in front of them, being visible. I think as people responsible for the human resource or as managers, it's so important to be the person who's taking the ownership around connecting people. And as I say, in the office, if something doesn't work, you typically just pull someone over, or you need to speak to Stuart about that, Tracy about this. They're not there, and it's got to be the realization that you do need to think of everything that goes wrong and then work out how you can mitigate it from happening. I think one thing that again we've seen some companies do really well and some companies struggle with is thinking about checking in around how much time they're spending at work. So I think we've seen it more probably with more junior positions where they can just get absolutely sucked into work for 10, 12 hours a day, which is not healthy. Are you checking in around, are you having breaks? Are you connected to family or friends or outside of work, or being that person if needed, or if you can, but making sure that there is separation, because I think, as I say, I think what we've seen at the more junior end is there's a nervousness around, okay, so I've now taken this new job. Is it going to last? Because most companies are suffering some financial pressure. The adism of first in, last out isn't, plays on people's minds. So there's an eagerness to please. Mentally, if you're stretched, you're probably not going to perform as well as if you had a better balance. I think the final thing around connection is distributor. If at all, if you've got a business or a team that allows it, I think one voice is not often the best. Try and have multiple people talking to, well, I think to the whole team, but probably especially to your new starter. I guess this is the thing for running all the way through. So it's so important to be prepared for all of the reasons we've just discussed. That level of comfort when someone comes into a business, you're not there to put an arm around them and make them feel included. You have to have a system that allows for inclusion to take place, whatever works best for your business, but also articulate, make sure that what you're expecting, what you need from that person, how you can set them up for success, how you can make them have quick wins, and also highlight them in front of other people, is really, really important. I think we're now moving to a place where people feel really comfortable with this way of working in the main, and there's definitely an acceptance that this is how it's going to be for some time, I think, in the UK, in the majority of roles that we recruit. So getting the connection right, the right level, so it's not over, but equally that you're present, available and visible is so important, and all of the different platforms that we've discussed. And then I guess the caveat to that, but then empower people. You've hired X person for a reason. Make them feel that, with rewards, with little university that we work with brilliantly. So they on the coffee roulette mornings that they do, the manager that person will go and speak to will know what they've done during that week, so that manager can go, oh, I hear you did this, and it just allows them to feel a little bit more proud, if you like, for want of a better word, in terms that they are achieving and that it's being heard in other parts of the business. Again, it's probably easier in larger organisations, but if it's a smaller company or a smaller team, sharing those successes that person's had, I don't necessarily think it's just for new joiners either, but that would definitely be important to feel included. I'm aware of time, and I think we're sort of bang on the money, so I'll finish there.
Thanks, Susan and Will. That was brilliant and really insightful. Just as I was listening to it, just a question I have is it feels like the failure to do this right is more in the how it feels for the person than a process thing, So would that be fair to say? Are there any clear process failures versus just not having enough touch points, and the inboarding and making them feel included is where the problems could lie potentially? You're on mute, Susan.
Sorry. I think some of the processes that started at the beginning were quite disjointed. I know we had a couple of clients that did start their remote onboarding with the candidate who joined on day one as an employee, coming into the office, picking up their laptop and having their HR induction in the office. And it was a bit uncomfortable for everybody that this was happening. So they've completely changed around their model now and allowed for the technology piece and the infrastructure piece with their IT team and their help desk team to catch up. So it took a number of weeks to catch up, but now they're completely onboarding remotely, and there's couriers going out with laptops as it should be, as opposed to asking somebody to come into the office. But certainly there was probably a 2 or 3 week delay at the start about trying to catch up with those who do have that infrastructure there and the logistics there to do so.
I think the only one that I'd sort of build on that is the manager comfort levels with the tech. So it's all well and good having a new starter who's got all the kit to use and may or may not be familiar with it, but is the manager ready to use it? And if they're not comfortable with onboarding people like this, if they're not comfortable with that contract coming through digitally or Teams, that we've had some just really clunky, that it's all been telephone based, there's been no video, and that can really can just be a bit unsettling if the person on the other side isn't familiar or comfortable with the tech that you're using.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, I think we'll in another couple of months' time be just calling this onboarding, because it won't even be remote onboarding. It'll be an awful lot like what normal looks like. So I think everybody will need to get on board and understand how to do this. But yeah, any final comments, or again, just mindful of time? Just for all of you listening in, obviously the recording of this is available, as will the presentation slides if you just want those separately. So, and if you have any questions on any of the topics or want to hear more from Will or Susan, just please come back and let us know. Will, Susan, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
And everybody else, we'll see you for the next Nash Talks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.